Oh, let me ask you something powerful. Why is it that two people can grow up in the same neighborhood, go to the same school, have the same opportunities, yet one becomes wildly successful while the other struggles their entire life? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's not even intelligence. It's something deeper. Today, we're going to uncover the brutal truth about why 2% of people break through and 98% never do. And once you understand it, you'll never see your life the same way again. Most people believe success is reserved for the chosen few. The naturally gifted, the incredibly lucky, or those born into the right circumstances. But that belief is a lie. Success is not some exclusive VIP club that only a select few can enter. It's not about how smart you are, how wealthy your parents were, or how many degrees you have hanging on your wall. Success begins with a decision, a raw, powerful, intentional decision to live life on your own terms and do whatever it takes to create the results you want. The 2% who succeed didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for motivation. They didn't wait for the right time. Because they understood there is no such thing. They looked at the life in front of them and said, "I will no longer be a victim. I will be the cause. I will be the force. I will be the one who shifts everything." This decision is not a one-time moment of inspiration. It's a lifestyle. It's a daily commitment. It's waking up every morning and choosing not to be average. It's saying no to excuses, no to distractions, no to blaming the world, and yes to responsibility. It's deciding that you will not stop until your vision becomes your reality. People often underestimate the power of decision. They think it's about setting a goal or writing to-do list. But a real decision cuts off all other options. When you truly decide to succeed, you eliminate the idea of failure as permanent. You might fail, but you don't accept failure as your identity. You learn, adjust, and come back stronger. That's what the 2% do. They're not flawless. They're not always fearless. But they made a decision so deep, so rooted in their soul, that quitting is not even part of the conversation. Most of the 98% never really decide. They dabble. They dip their toes in the water. They make wishes, not commitments. They say they want change, but their actions prove they want comfort more. They leave the door open for doubt. They set goals, but when things get hard, they pull back. When it gets uncomfortable, they retreat. When they get criticized, they stop. That's not a decision. That's a desire without conviction. The truth is, everyone wants success, but only a few are willing to decide to do what's required. That means putting in the reps when no one is watching. That means studying when everyone else is scrolling. That means facing your fears, working through the pain, and going forward when your mind is screaming to quit. The decision to succeed is the ultimate power move, because once you decide, the universe responds. Resources show up, opportunities open. People begin to take notice, not because anything changed out there, but because everything changed in you. The 2% don't wait for certainty, they create it. They don't wait for signs, they become the signal. That decision is the dividing line between a life of mediocrity and a life of meaning. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it's available to anyone bold enough to make it. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they're asleep at the wheel. They move through life on autopilot, reacting instead of creating, existing instead of living. You can spot it in their routines, their habits, their language. They wake up, check their phone, complain about work, do just enough to get by, then numb themselves with distractions until it's time to go to bed and do it all over again. No intention, no vision, no fire. It's not that they can't succeed, it's that they've never trained themselves to take control of their mind and make decisions based on purpose instead of programming. The 98% go through life like passengers, not drivers. They've handed the steering wheel of their future to fear, comfort, social approval, or past experiences. They're not even aware that they've given up control, because it happens slowly and silently. One excuse at a time, one compromise at a time, until they're no longer making choices. They're just following a pattern. Living on autopilot is the silent killer of dreams. It convinces you that you're doing enough when you're really stuck. It keeps you busy with meaningless activity while stealing the very things that make life fulfilling. Growth, progress, achievement, and contribution. People say things like, "One day I'll start that business," or "Someday I'll get in shape," or "I'll change when I have more time." But someday isn't a day of the week. That's the language of autopilot. That's the voice of someone who's given away their power to act. The problem is, the more you live this way, the more it becomes your identity. You start to believe this is just how life is. That other people get the breaks. That success is for the lucky or the chosen. And when you believe that long enough, you stop trying. You stop dreaming. You start shrinking your goals to fit your current habits instead of expanding your habits to meet your goals. The 2% aren't smarter. They're not genetically superior. What makes them different is they've woken up. They've made a decision to take back control, to stop being a passive character in their own story. They don't let their past define them. They don't let fear decide their future. And they certainly don't let distractions steal their present. They question their habits, their patterns, their beliefs. They set intentions. They ask powerful questions like, what do I want? What's stopping me? What am I tolerating that I need to eliminate? They understand that their time, their energy, and their attention are precious resources, and they guard them fiercely. They plan their days instead of drifting through them. They use pain as fuel instead of using it as an excuse. And most importantly, they act. They don't wait for permission or guarantees. They don't wait to feel ready. They've trained their nervous system to live awake, to live deliberately, because they know that drifting is the fastest route to regret, and they refuse to let their life be an accident. The people who succeed at the highest levels aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who learn how to use it. The 2% under something that the 98% completely misunderstand. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's part of it. It's the path. It's the feedback. It's the fuel. The people who never make it are the ones who run from failure like it's a disease. The moment they hit resistance, hear criticism, or experience rejection, they pull back. They interpret every setback as a sign that they're not cut out for it, or that it wasn't meant to be. But the 2%, they see failure as a teacher. They don't internalize it as identity, they interpret it as information. What didn't work? What can I change? Where can I grow? They don't fear failure because they understand its value. Failure isn't a signal to stop. It's a signal to adjust, refine, and go again. This time stronger, smarter, and sharper. Most people have been trained to associate failure with shame. School taught them that mistakes mean you're not good enough. Society taught them that if you fail in public, you're humiliated. But the truth is, every breakthrough is born from breakdown. Every successful person has failed more times than most people have even tried. The difference is, they didn't stop. They kept showing up. They kept moving forward. They understood that every failure was a necessary rep. Just like building a muscle, you've got to tear the fibers before they grow back stronger. You've got to go through failure to build resilience, to grow clarity, to gain mastery. Success without failure isn't real. It's surface level, short-lived, and fragile. Real success is forged in fire, by people who didn't give up when it got hot. The 98% see failure as final, but the 2% see it as fuel. They train their minds to reframe every loss into a lesson. They don't waste time beating themselves up. They extract value from the experience and use it to move forward. They're not emotionally attached to being right. They're committed to getting better. That's why they win. They're willing to fall flat on their face, get up, and try again with a smile. Alpha. They're not afraid of looking stupid because they're playing the long game. They know that the person who's willing to fail the most will ultimately succeed the most. They use every failure to strengthen their mindset, to build grit, to prove to themselves that they are unstoppable. They embrace the discomfort because they know that's where growth happens. They stop running from failure and start partnering with it. The truth is, if you're not failing, you're not pushing hard enough. If you're not getting rejected, you're not taking bold enough action. Failure isn't something to avoid. It's something to lean into. The people at the top of their game have one thing in common: they've failed more than most people have even attempted. And they turned every one of those failures into fuel for their future. Discipline isn't sexy. It's not flashy. It's not the kind of thing that gets applause or goes viral. But it's the foundation of every extraordinary life. The 2% who succeed understand that talent might get you started, but discipline is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. And it will disappear. The people who are waiting, feel like it, are already done before they begin. Feelings are fleeting, but discipline is a decision. It's a commitment to do what needs to be done, regardless of how you feel in the moment. The 98% operate based on emotion. If they're tired, they skip it. If they're discouraged, they quit. If it's hard, they back off. The 2%, they show up. Tired, frustrated, uncertain. They show up anyway. They've conditioned themselves to follow through, to honor their word, to keep their standards high no matter the circumstances. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about creating structure in a world that's constantly trying to pull you off course. And structure gives you freedom. Most people think freedom is doing whatever you want, whenever you want. But that's not freedom. That's chaos. Real freedom is being able to choose your actions with intention, to build habits that serve your vision, and to know that you're in control of your time and energy. Discipline is the bridge between goals and achievement. It's what keeps the dream alive long after the excitement fades. You want to be fit. Discipline. You want to build a business. Discipline. You want a powerful relationship. Discipline. You want peace of mind. Discipline. Everything worth having is on the other side of sustained, intentional action. The 2% don't just rely on discipline when it's convenient. They make it a part of their identity. It's who they are. They take pride in doing the work, in grinding through the days when it's not easy, in being the kind of person who gets it done no matter what. And because they operate from discipline, they create momentum. And momentum is power. The 98% are constantly starting over because they keep breaking promises to themselves. They negotiate with their goals. They rationalize their excuses. And over time, that erodes self-trust. But when you're disciplined, you build confidence. You trust yourself to follow through. You create a history of wins, and that compounds. There's a cost to discipline. Yes. You have to say no to distractions. You have to delay gratification. You have to stay focused when everyone else is wandering. But the cost of undisciplined living is far greater. Regret, stagnation, disappointment. Those are the prices people pay when they don't take control of their actions. The 2% have simply decided that the price of discipline is worth it. They've trained their nervous system to lean into structure, to crave progress, to find satisfaction in the process itself. They don't need a cheerleader. They don't need someone watching. They do it because they said they would. They do it because their future depends on it. They do it because their standards are higher than their circumstances. Most people don't realize how much power they've handed over to fear. It's invisible, but it's everywhere, quietly guiding decisions, shaping beliefs, and shutting down dreams before they ever get started. The difference between the 2% who rise and the 98% who stay stuck is not that they don't feel fear. It's that they refuse to be ruled by it. Fear is natural, yes. It shows up anytime you're on the edge of growth, on the edge of the unknown. But the 2% have trained themselves to recognize fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal. It tells them they're on the right track, that they're about to break through something that most people run from. They don't retreat from fear. They lean into it, they dance with it, they dominate it. Because they understand one truth that changes everything: fear loses power the moment you face it. The 98% let fear dictate the size of their life. They avoid the risk, avoid the challenge, avoid the possibility of embarrassment, rejection, or failure. But in doing so, they also avoid growth, fulfillment, and everything they were capable of becoming. Their world shrinks to the size of their comfort zone, and they spend years living inside that invisible cage. The 2%, though, they get that the comfort zone is a trap. It might feel safe, but nothing grows there. It's not security, it's slow death. Every dream worth chasing, every calling worth answering, lives outside that zone. The people who succeed are those who are willing to feel fear, hear the doubt, face the unknown, and move forward anyway. That's courage, not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Fear is a liar. It tells you you're not ready. It tells you you're not enough. It whispers that people will laugh, that you'll fall, that you'll fail. And if you listen, you shrink. But the 2% don't listen. They challenge that voice. They ask, what if I am ready? What if I can figure it out? What if this fear is just a sign that I'm about to grow? They reframe it. They don't just feel fear, they interpret it differently. They use it as fuel, because behind every fear is freedom. Every time you confront it, you expand your capacity. You grow stronger, bolder, more certain in your ability to face whatever comes next. No one is born fearless, but everyone has the ability to become fear-trained. That's what the 2% do. They put themselves in situations where fear shows up and practice stepping through it. They build the habit of bravery. They trust that the more they lean in, the easier it gets. And over time, fear loses its grip. It becomes background noise, something to notice, but never obey. That's why the 2% keep rising while others stay paralyzed. They don't wait for fear to go away. They don't wait to be confident. They move while it's messy. They act before they're ready, because they know that clarity comes from action and confidence is built through courage. The 2% who succeed don't just set goals, they obsess over a vision. They don't wake up just trying to survive another day. They wake up with purpose, with clarity, with fire in their eyes, because they know exactly where they're headed and why it matters. Most people operate from vague intentions. They say things like, I want to be rich, I want to be happy, or I want to be successful. But they have no real blueprint, no measurable target, no emotional attachment to what that actually looks like. The 98% live reactively, constantly putting out fires, checking boxes, living by default. But the 2% live by design. Their vision pulls them forward when motivation fades. Their vision keeps them grounded when things get chaotic. Their vision reminds them of who they are and what they're building, even when the world tells them to quit. A powerful vision does more than inspire. It commands action. When you can see it, feel it, taste it, and believe in it before it's real, that's when your brain starts wiring itself for success. The subconscious mind can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. And the 2% use that fact to their advantage. They visualize constantly. They step into the identity of the person who already has the outcome. They align their habits, their focus, and their decisions with that future. Because if your vision isn't strong enough to dominate your excuses will dominate your vision. Clarity is power, and lack of clarity is the fastest way to waste your potential. The 2% are clear. They can describe their future in detail. They know how much it costs, what it looks like, what it will feel like, and what kind of person they need to become to live it. The 98% get distracted easily. They chase trends, compare themselves to others, switch paths the moment things get hard. But the 2% stay locked in. Their vision is not just something they wrote on a journal. It's something they breathe. They rehearse it in their minds. They talk about it with certainty. They make sacrifices that others aren't willing to make because their future is already real to them. They say no to distractions because they've already said yes to something bigger. The stronger your vision, the easier it becomes to filter out what doesn't serve it. That's why the 2% move with intention, and that's why they progress while others plateau. It's not just about dreaming big. It's about attaching meaning to that dream. The 2% don't just chase goals, they chase purpose. They ask themselves, who will suffer if I don't show up fully? They give their vision emotional weight. It's no longer optional, it's necessary. It's their standard. It's their non-negotiable. That level of emotional connection fuels consistency even when the path is unclear. When you have a vision that grips your soul, you don't need constant motivation. You're driven from within. And that's what separates the doers from the drifters, the winners from the wishers, the 2% from everyone else. Success is never an accident. It's a byproduct of discipline, consistency, and an unbreakable commitment to doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. The 2% who rise to the top understand that motivation is temporary, but systems are permanent. They don't rely on fleeting feelings to guide their actions. They've built routines, habits, and rituals that automate their progress, even on the hard days. When most people let their emotions decide whether they'll show up, the 2% make that decision in advance. They remove the emotion from execution. Because they know greatness is not about intensity, it's about consistency. You don't get results by going all in once and quitting. You get results by showing up every single day, even when it's boring, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one is watching. The 98% are trapped in the cycle of inconsistency. They start with excitement, crash when it gets tough, and then look for the next big shortcut. But the 2% understand that the gap between where they are and where they want to be is not a lack of talent. It's a lack of discipline. They don't hope to become successful. They train for it. Just like a world-class athlete shows up at the gym, no matter how they feel, the top 2% show up for their goals whether they're inspired or not. They've built systems that keep them moving forward. Morning routines, nighttime rituals, planning days in advance, tracking progress, managing energy, setting clear boundaries. These aren't fancy techniques. They're the backbone of consistency. They also understand the power of momentum. When you do something every day, even in small amounts, you begin to build internal trust. You begin to believe in yourself because you're proving it with action. The 2% stack wins. They focus on progress, not perfection. They understand that some days will be ugly, some days will be slow, but the key is never breaking the chain. One day becomes 2, 2 becomes 10, and suddenly, you've created a rhythm that's almost impossible to stop. That's when confidence grows. That's when habits become identity. And that's when success becomes inevitable. The 2% also know how to manage their time and energy like a pro. They don't just work hard, they work smart. They set priorities, they batch tasks, they eliminate distractions. They know what drains them and what fuels them. They don't waste hours scrolling, procrastinating, or being busy without results. Every hour has a purpose. Every task aligns with their larger vision. They treat their calendar like a contract with their future self. They aren't perfect, but they are intentional. That's what creates consistent performance. It's not about willpower, it's about creating an environment and a routine where success becomes the default, not the exception. Most people want results without repetition. But the 2% understand that repetition is the mother of mastery. They do the boring work. They embrace the grind. They find joy in the process because they know that's where the real transformation happens. When others quit, they recommit. When others wait for the perfect time, they make now the perfect time. Because they know discipline isn't a punishment. It's the pathway to freedom, fulfillment, and the life most people only dream about. The 2% who succeed are masters of emotional control. They understand that emotions can either be fuel or fire. Either they'll drive you forward or burn everything you've built. The difference lies in your ability to respond instead of react. Most people live at the mercy of their emotional state. When things go well, they feel great and perform well. When things go wrong, they spiral into doubt, anger, fear, or apathy. But the 2% don't wait to feel good in order to take action. They decide how to feel. They've trained themselves to shift their emotional state quickly, to use stress as a signal instead of a stop sign, and to manage fear rather than be paralyzed by it. They know that your internal world shapes your external results. If you're constantly overwhelmed, anxious, bitter, or insecure, you will make poor decisions, hesitate to act, or sabotage your momentum. But if you're calm, focused, confident, and hungry, regardless of your circumstances, you show up differently. You speak with conviction, you move with clarity, you take bold, strategic action. The 2% understand that emotional fitness is just like physical fitness. It takes daily reps. They practice gratitude, breathwork, visualization, meditation, journaling, reframing their thoughts, and conditioning their focus so they stay grounded and resourceful even in chaos. They don't allow temporary emotions to derail their long-term vision. The 98% fall victim to their emotions. They say things like, "I don't feel like it. I'm just not motivated. I'm too overwhelmed," and they treat those feelings as facts. But feelings aren't facts, they're feedback, and the 2% have learned to decode that feedback. Instead of being ruled by it, they use it to pivot, to grow, to shift gears. They've built the emotional muscle to stay calm under pressure, to stay driven when there's no applause, and to stay compassionate in the face of conflict. That gives them an edge in business, relationships, leadership, and life. Success requires high-level decision-making, and the worst decisions are made in emotional storms. That's why the 2% have trained themselves to pause, breathe, and refocus. They understand that your state, your mindset, your physiology, your focus, determines your strategy and outcomes. They use their body to shift their mood, they use their focus to control their experience, and they use empowering language to rewrite their story. Even when things fall apart, they ask better questions. Not, "Why is this happening to me?" but, "What's the opportunity here? How can I grow through this? What's the next best move?" They protect their energy like it's sacred. They're conscious of what they consume, news, social media, conversations, because they know those things influence their emotional baseline. They surround themselves with people who challenge and uplift them, not drain and distract them. They refuse to be around constant complainers or emotional vampires. They know that success requires being emotionally available for the work, the relationships, the vision, and that means setting emotional boundaries. Ultimately, the 2% don't suppress their emotions. They master them. They allow themselves to feel deeply, but act wisely. They don't fear emotions, they just refuse to be led by the wrong ones. They've built the inner strength to stay steady in storms, focused through noise, and aligned with their mission no matter what the world throws at them. The top 2% understand that success is not a solo pursuit. They know that relationships are the most valuable currency in life and business. They build powerful networks, cultivate meaningful alliances, and surround themselves with people who elevate their thinking, challenge their complacency, and hold them to a higher standard. They don't spend their time trying to do everything alone, because they realize that one powerful connection, one aligned partnership, or one strategic mentor can collapse years of struggle into months of progress. They are intentional about who they allow into their circle, because they know proximity is power. You become who you spend the most time with. Your standards, your energy, your drive, your habits are all shaped by the people you surround yourself with. The 98%, on the other hand, often stay stuck in environments that drain them. They're afraid to outgrow their circle because they fear being judged, rejected, or abandoned. But the 2% aren't looking for approval. They're looking for alignment. They seek out people who are playing the game at a higher level. They put themselves in rooms where they feel like the smallest fish, because they know that's where real growth happens. They understand the importance of mentorship. They study the moves of those who've already walked the path. They ask questions. They invest in relationships that sharpen them. And most importantly, they give value first. They understand that networking isn't about taking. It's about serving, contributing, showing up as someone worth connecting with. Strong relationships don't happen by accident. The 2% are intentional communicators. They listen deeply, they speak clearly, and they resolve conflict with maturity. They're not driven by ego in conversations. They're driven by connection. Whether it's in business or personal life, they know how to build trust, maintain integrity, and navigate difficult conversations without destroying bridges. They show up consistently, they keep their word, and they lead with authenticity. That's why people follow them, support them, and believe in their vision. People don't just invest in ideas, they invest in people. And when you become someone people trust, the doors to opportunities swing wide open. The 2% also understand that you can't attract powerful relationships if you're not doing powerful work. They focus on becoming the kind of person that others want to connect with. They build credibility through results, reputation, and reliability. They don't just talk about goals, they execute. And that execution builds momentum, which draws in the right people, the right conversations, and the right deals. When you operate at a high standard consistently, people notice. Opportunities start to find you. You don't have to chase them down. You become a magnet for them. They also guard their energy from toxic people. They have the courage to say no to what doesn't serve them, even if that means walking away from long-standing relationships. They don't let guilt or obligation keep them stuck in small thinking circles. They know that every connection is either helping them grow or holding them back. So they choose to be around those who inspire action, not excuses. People who see the best in them and challenge them to live it. The 2% who rise to the top don't just take action. They take relentless, intelligent, and consistent action. They don't wait for the perfect moment, the right mood, or the ideal plan to start. They understand that momentum beats perfection every single time. While the 98% are planning, overthinking, doubting, hesitating, or procrastinating, the 2% are moving. They are constantly executing, adapting, and improving through action. They understand that clarity comes through doing, not just thinking. They don't get stuck in analysis paralysis because they know success is a moving target, and you can't steer a parked car. Once they commit to a vision, they act on it daily, even if they don't feel ready, even if the conditions aren't ideal, even if no one's watching. The 2% treat progress as a discipline, not a mood. They don't rely on motivation to move. They rely on habits, systems, and a deep emotional commitment to their why. They've built a bias toward action. Every single day they're asking, what can I do to move the needle? They don't confuse activity with productivity. They're strategic about where they focus their energy. They prioritize what matters, they attack high-impact tasks first, and they are obsessed with execution. They don't get seduced by busy work or distracted by low-value tasks. They know that success isn't just about doing more. It's about doing what matters most with consistency and intensity. The 98% often wait for the stars to align before they begin. They wait for confidence, wait for certainty, wait for someone to validate them, wait until they feel like it. But that waiting becomes a habit, and eventually, a lifestyle. The 2% have trained themselves to act their way into confidence. They understand that confidence isn't something you find. It's something you build, one bold action at a time. Every step they take, even if it's imperfect, builds momentum, clarity, and courage. They fail fast, learn faster, and keep moving. They're not afraid to look foolish, fall short, or face rejection because they've decided that comfort is never the goal. Growth is. They also use failure as a feedback system. They don't view mistakes as dead ends. They treat them like data. Every setback is a signal to refine their approach, sharpen their strategy, and build emotional resilience. While most people quit after 1 or 2 failures, the 2% treat each failure as a necessary checkpoint on the road to mastery. They understand that rejection, resistance, and roadblocks are part of the process, not proof that they're on the wrong path. Their discipline is ruthless. They show up even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when the results are slow. They don't allow their emotions to dictate their effort. Their consistency builds trust in themselves, and that trust becomes unstoppable confidence. Over time, their small daily actions compound into massive long-term results. The 2% don't just talk about what they want, they live in alignment with it through consistent execution, day in and day out, until the vision becomes real.